Something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. It might hurt you. Hope you don't lose your mind. See, I was just a boy, about 8 years old. Threw me a Bible on that Mississippi road. What's good, y'all? I love that fucking movie. Welcome to Banquet Hall Podcast, first ever film club. If y'all are listening to the sound of my voice right now, that means one of two things. First one is that I decided for something that's very anti what I like decided to do, but I decided to pull up the camera without a guest and actually do the thing, be on video, do the film club podcast, something I've been working on and thinking about for quite some time. Option two that could have happened, I could have got so good at messing up this video that I did it like 100 times and then I just memorized like messing up. It's not that one, but it could have been. But some of y'all have been seeing me post about this, talking about the Banquet Hall Podcast Film Club. I've been talking about it for a long time, but I think when I saw Sinners in the movie theater, I was like, yo, it's time for the film club. It's time. And I had to start with Sinners because everybody's talking about Sinners. Even the like perfectionist in my brain was like, man, you missed the train. Like everybody already posted their Sinners reactions, everybody posted their Sinners reviews. But that gets back to the first point. I was like, you know what? It could be 100,000 Sinners reviews out there on the interwebs. Y'all ain't got mine though until right now. Because I feel like, especially as a creative, sometimes you get so caught up with, oh, I don't have the 1,000 likes, 1,000 followers yet. This is something that's pure passion project. It could just be me listening to this when I edit it. It's getting out there. But I know the listeners at Banquet Hall, y'all are some real ones. So I know we're going to get some good interaction. We're going to get some good feedback from these episodes. So in preparation for this episode, I posted a few things on my stories, which if I post a question on my story, know that I'm not just asking it out of curiosity. A lot of times I'm working on something, whether it's for the podcast, whether it's poetry or screenplays that I've been thinking about writing. That feedback is essential to that creative process. So all of y'all that did submit feedback for this episode or input for this episode, I should say, thank y'all in advance. If this is somehow your first time listening to the Banquet Hall podcast, welcome. Follow the podcast on social media at Banquet Hall Pod. Like, subscribe, follow. The general format of the podcast has been interviews with activists, artists, entrepreneurs, everyday people in my life that are doing amazing things, have amazing stories. So please, 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 if this is your first episode, at least save one of the interviews to your watch later. Recently, I did an interview with Zay Monet, a really dope cultural photographer. We met 20 plus years ago at a little school called Carson Christian School, and we had a phenomenal conversation about photography, about capturing the warmth, love, just that energy, that goldenness in people, especially Black folks. It was one of my favorite episodes of the podcast I've ever recorded. So hopefully y'all check it out. But yeah, let's just get into it. Film Club, this is going to be a space for me to share about movies that are popular or in the media and the zeitgeist, but also films that people probably haven't checked out, lesser known films. Like I said, I'm constantly watching film podcasts, reading up on film. There got to a point in my life for the last few years where I transferred all of my Laker knowledge into film. Like I know a lot more about movies than I know about basketball right now, which is insane to think of. Um, but yeah, as y'all know who follow me on social media at the fourth Kyler, a lot of times, multiple times a week, I'll be posting some weirdly moody picture of AMC theater. A lot of times with the black and white filter. I don't know. It's just an aesthetic I like. But showing that I'm at the movies, seeing new releases, seeing weird things that are re-released, and it's just such a fantastic form of escapism. A lot of people don't like going to the movies by themselves. Give it a chance, especially if you haven't tried it in a long time. There's something so therapeutic and special about going to a movie by yourself if you love movies. And that's the goal of this podcast, just to share that love for movies with other people in my circles, who love movies. Maybe you're just a avid or not as avid of a movie watcher. Maybe this gets you into watching movies more. One of my close friends who I always text when I'm going to movies, usually, so here's the flow when I get to movies, and I promise we're gonna talk about Sinners. Don't turn off the podcast yet. Y'all be wanting me to talk a lot. This is me talking a lot. I just talk a lot about stuff I actually care about. Go to the movies, sit through the credits, leave a review on Letterboxd, or document the movie on Letterboxd. If y'all don't know what Letterboxd is, social media app for cinephiles. If you love movies, if you love lists of movies, tracking movies that you've seen, definitely recommend downloading Letterboxd. And that's Letterboxd with a D at the end. So download it, follow me. I always post on there when I'm seeing movies. I always post on there when I'm seeing a movie. Sometimes I leave a review, sometimes I don't. I try to at least rank it on a scale of 5 stars. Sometimes I'll leave a full review on there. But like I said, watch a movie, credits roll. I'm going on Letterboxd, especially during Marvel movies, because there's a post-credit scene. What else I'm gonna do? Go on Letterboxd, document the movie. Then I'll hit up my homegirl and be like, "Hey, check this out," or "Hey, don't waste your time." And she's someone who told me that if I recommended that she watch The Rock, she would watch it. So I was like, okay, people actually care about my movie opinions. At least she does. So maybe it's just me and her having a conversation on the podcast, but who cares? We are here. And if y'all can't tell by the vibes, we keeping it fully Kyler. We keeping it laid back, not trying to be perfect. Sometimes I'm gonna be reading off my notes that I took. Sometimes I'm gonna be talking directly to camera. We chilling. I'm leaned back in the chair. When I first was about to start recording and really like prepare to record, I was about to do like the whole influencer thing and be all, I'm like, nah, man, that's not what y'all here for. That is not what y'all are here for. But without further ado, let's get into Sinners. So there's going to be themed episodes. This one I thought as a start would just be purely about the movie, some thoughts about the movie. And this is going to be full spoilers. I thought about doing a spoiler-free version of this, but I ain't got time. Go see the movie. Press pause, go see the movie. Spoiler zone from here on out. So, general thoughts on the movie first. Obviously, I loved it. One of my favorite movies that I've ever seen. Just immaculate theater experience. I saw it 4 times in theaters, which I don't think I've ever seen a movie 4 times in theaters. Only movie that I know I've seen at least 3 times in theaters was Transformers, because that's cinematic masterpiece. Come on. But yeah, Sinners, I didn't intend to see it 4 times, but multiple people wanted to see it with me. And I took that with a sense of pride that they really want to see this very popular movie. They want to wait to see it with me. So I saw it 4 times. Every time it just kept getting better and better and better. There are 2 quotes that I wrote down as guiding the conversation. One of them related to freedom, the other related to family, which are 2 major themes in the movie for me. Obviously, there's a lot of themes, there's a lot of subtext in the movie, and I'm gonna get to a lot of it. But these 2 quotes are really special for me. The first one happens towards the end of the movie, which if y'all did see Sinners and y'all didn't sit through the credits to see the 2 post-credit scenes, definitely want to be on the lookout for that next time you watch it. But the first one, this is said by Buddy Guy when he's talking to Stack, when he's there with Mary at the bar, or I think at his jazz club, Pearline's, that he just performed at. And he said, "You know something? Maybe once a week I wake up paralyzed reliving that night. But before the sun went down, I think that was the best day of my life." When I first heard that quote, I was like, man, like how powerful is that? We just watched 2 hours of this beautiful movie with beautiful Black people, ended with this blood fest with vampires. Nobody knows what's happening. People are losing people. But for Sammy, he was like, man, before the sun went down, I think that was the best day of my life. And how powerful is that? All this stuff happens. Now we cussed on this, but all this shit happens. And you're like, yeah, that was still the best day of my life. And the reason this quote is so impactful for me, it makes me think of a lot of days early on in my poetry career, towards the end of my UCSD student career, when I first started getting heavily involved with Black expression. it will be some long days, but I get to the open mic and I'm like, man, this is a great night. This was something special. Whether it was talented performers, great vibes, energy, or very raw healing emotions, like no matter what happened earlier in the day, I'm like, nah, like this night was special. Or even some days at UCSD where we would have like just random conversations or a stream a movie series, or one day we binge watch Flavor of Love. Like there's a lot of those nights in college where I'm like, oh, that's the college experience. That's when I felt free in this space. In the midst of all this stress, in the midst of all this going on in the media, that freedom in the middle of all this angst, all this anxiety, all this depression, all this darkness, to be able to say that in the middle of all of that, you had the best day of your life or the best few hours of your life, there's a lot of power in that. And at its core, Sinners is a movie about Black people feeling free, searching for freedom, seeking out freedom. Freedom's at the core of it. And part of that freedom is so embedded in community, it's embedded in villages, it's embedded in family, which leads to the other quote. The second quote, this happens when Stack unsuccessfully tries to bite Smoke towards the end, and he's about to potentially kill him, but the camera cuts and we go outside to see what Sammy and Remick are up to. But he says, or Smoke says to Stack, sorry I couldn't keep you safe. And Stack replies, don't be sorry. You always did. And I think anyone who has a cousin similar age as them, sibling similar age, or a very close friend who you see as a sibling, like that's just such a tender moment where it's like, I was supposed to keep you safe. And I think it really magnifies just how emotional, how devastating that moment is for Smoke. When he sees his brother dead, when he realizes what he has to do or thinks he has to do to free himself from this vampire situation, just such a very, very, very impactful quote. So, as I mentioned, I listened to a lot of movie podcasts, and there's one podcast called The Big Picture, and it was one of their episodes where they were like previewing movies to come or movies to be on the lookout for, like movies they might be excited for that are coming out in 2025. And this was probably like maybe a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And they mentioned it was like, oh, there's this movie coming out by Ryan Coogler. Michael B. Jordan is playing twin vampires, which isn't completely accurate to how the movie ended up turning out. But Sean Fennessy, one of the hosts, brought this up as like, are we interested in this? Haley Steinfeld's in it. And I was like, huh. So I looked it up on Letterboxd. I was added it to my watch list and had it in my back of my mind. Okay, look out for this movie, Michael B. Jordan. And then the trailer started coming out, and I was like, "Oh, this is that movie that Sean was talking about." I'm like, "Okay, like I'm kind of interested," but fast forwarding to actually watching the movie, I was like, "Huh." The trailers really hit a lot of what this movie was. And I will say that I actively try to avoid trailers after the first time, just because I go to the movie so much that I'm constantly seeing the trailers, and I don't even want in my subconscious spoilers from the movie. Obviously, the trailer, like, quote unquote, spoils some things in movies, but if I just see it once and get hooked, that's good enough for me. The more I see it, I'm like, all right, now when I go see the movie, I'm waiting for the scene where the protagonist does the thing. I'm waiting for this scenery to appear so I know that this is going to happen. Oh, this character's in the trailer, so they obviously are alive at the end of the movie. All these different things where I just like, yeah, I don't even want my subconscious to frame how I'm viewing the movie for the first time. So as many times I go to the movies, literally every time the Sinners trailer will come on, looking at my phone, actively thinking about something else, like I don't want to know any more about this movie. Go see the movie. First time, title card comes up or title sequence comes up, and it's Clarksdale, Mississippi, 1932. First thing you see, Sammy driving back up to the church, has these slashes across his cheek. Very early and effective jump scare when they flash to Remick in the nighttime. I was like, ooh, this, for those of y'all who like horror movies, this reminded me of Insidious, because there's that one jump scare in Insidious. I was like, oh, is this movie about to be like a jump scare movie? So I didn't know what I was getting into fully, but I was like, all right, I'm here for it. But I think that, and I'll talk about this a lot throughout the movie and some of the things I'm going to mention. But one of the things at first it was like, was just the idea of this movie being set in 1932, quote unquote, post slavery. And one of the first images you see a black man driving. But also later in the movie, you learn about the sharecroppers and you see black people picking cotton in fields. You see the chain gang. Late in the movie, you learn about the KKK still being in existence. And we're in this time right now as a society where people are actively trying to take Black history out of classrooms, stop quote unquote DEI practices, taking ethnic studies out of classrooms. And it's so important because we have thousands of films across history, thousands and thousands that have all centered white supremacy, a lot of depictions of Black people only in chains. And so you get this movie with a more diverse depiction of Black people during a time period that is post-slavery, where people talk about slavery as being so long ago, as if it happened like hundreds of thousands of years ago or thousands of years ago. But it's like, no, like there were vehicles, there were cars, people were driving while Black people were still in the fields picking cotton, and these inequities exist. And I'm not intending to talk a lot about some of the American historical political context of the movie. It's naturally going to come up because Black people live a political life. But just those little things, I'm like, like I know I'm going to like this movie just because I know that there's so many talking points you can have with this movie. And then we meet Smoke and Stack for the first time. They're dressed very nice. Obviously, they have a lot of cash with them. They're buying this venue that's eventually going to be a juke joint. One of the first laughs of the movie for me too, when they're like, "You boys twins?" It's like, nah, that's my cousin. Because it's like, this is. I asked a question on my story about this movie being authentically Black. This is one of those authentically Black moments where like, we gonna cuss a little bit on this podcast, y'all. So if y'all don't like curse words, I apologize, but we chit-chatting here. But y'all know, like, sometimes as Black people, when we be fucking with people, it's like, come on, man. Like, nah, duh, we twins. But yeah, so they go into the joint and they talk about the KKK, and the Klan member, he says, oh, the KKK don't exist no more. And there's other comments about like Chicago and the quote unquote North just being like the South with skyscrapers. I forget exactly how it's phrased. But all of these different symbols, all these different notes that just highlight that Black people's existence during this time period. Yes, this quote unquote post-slavery, but how many dirty skeletons of slavery are still alive and well? The Jim Crow era and all the implications of the Jim Crow era that is just like something that happened, quote unquote, so long ago. So you have that scene. And then the first time the cousins ride together, when Smoke and Stack, they pick up Sammy, Smoke and Stack let the dad know, like, yeah, we're going to take care of him. We're going to have him back. And that first ride where they're talking about abuse in the household, I think Stack asked him, like, oh, do we hit you? And then when Stack was telling his own story, he was talking about his own life being abused. But he's like, oh, he ain't mean it, though. And those conversations that are just so tender that I feel like only happen with people that are like siblings to you or only like cousins with you, where it's like you have this shared understanding of very intimate part of family dynamics. You understand how people are experiencing these things. You understand a deep level of perspective and how people react to these things. And it's like, these tender moments that can happen in this ride with cousins. It just felt, once again, like an authentically Black moment for me. Then you get to the point they split up. Smoke goes into town. Stack and Sammy go to find Delta Slim. One of the other things I was like, I really like this movie already. And this is like not even 10 minutes into the movie. But when Smoke gets into town, he meets this young Black girl, asks her if she ever heard of the twins. She says yes. So he offers her money to watch his car while he goes in to talk to Grace's husband. I think his name's like Caden. Um, he's going in there to talk to them, trying to hook it up for the juke joint. And I think he offers her 10 cents a minute or a second, whatever it may be. And then she's like, deal. And he's like, nah, like, you need to negotiate. Loved it. Because we talk about this notion of lifting as we climb, sharing what you learn. And I think that is such a beautiful representation of the role that we have in community, we have in our villages with each other, where it's like, nah, like I have access to this knowledge. I know how this is supposed to be done. And I use supposed to loosely, like obviously a lot of these things are rooted in capitalism, and we can unpack a lot of the layers of what it means to even need to negotiate. But within a society that we live in, negotiation is important. And the responsibility of elders to pass on this knowledge to people who may not have access to this as early as our non-Black counterparts do. Like if you grow up in a family where the first person to ever go to college is the youngest in the family, they're getting access to all this knowledge at an earlier age than people who are older in the family. Juxtapose that with people who come from these legacy kids and their granddad donated to the school. Great granddad was the first quarterback of the team and they won the championship in 1922. Like all that shit. Like some people have had college, they've had access to this knowledge, or they have the wealth to have access to these resources for so long that some of us don't even, like my first like formal education on negotiation was in my master's program, which obviously there's a lot of resources to teach yourselves these things, but just thinking through like, okay, I'm the first person in my family to get formally trained on negotiation in a business sense. So that little interaction was just so beautiful. And I saw some other people tweet about how important that moment was for them, because it's just like, yeah, like taking the knowledge that you have, whether it's things that you learn through education, whether it's something that you've done years of practice with, sharing recipes, like passing on this generational knowledge, that oral tradition is just so important. And I think to see that represented in the film that way, I was like, oh yeah, I'm so ready for this. Next moment for me, this is going to be a lot of moments because moments make the bigger film. That's why I love film so much, because just so much thought, so much character building goes into various moments, and which leads to another authentically Black moment. The first time Sammy strums that guitar, you hear his voice singing. And I don't know if y'all know this, but the actor that plays Sammy, Miles Caden or Caden, I believe they found him, or they discovered him for the movie. I believe he was a backup singer for her while she was on tour, while they were on tour. And this is his first acting role. And he really sound like that. And when he starts singing, and Stack's like, you see his look on his face, like, boy, we about to make some money. Authentically Black. And when I say authentically Black, I hope y'all know what I mean. Like just beautifully, like, yeah, this is our language. This is how we talk. Because I'm recording this podcast after seeing this movie. I'm going to save my thoughts on this. I'm not going to share the specific movie, but you'll know the type of movie it is. But it's a comedy, predominantly white. Well, this movie was more diverse. I'll give it credit. It was a diverse movie. But a lot of the humor was centered around the leads who were two white men. And there's a lot of really good, critically good, or critically acclaimed, I should say, comedies that are centered around white men that sometimes as a Black person, when I watch them, I'm like I see where the joke is, but I'm not laughing. So that's what I mean by authentically Black, where it's like you can tell that there's Black voices behind this, there's Black experiences like this, because I know that cousin. I know that cousin who's like, ooh, that like they see that talent and it's like, oh, we about to make some bread tonight. Speaking of making money, the introduction of Delta Slim, man. And if I'm not mistaken, the actor that plays him, Delroy Lindo, he is British as hell. And you can't tell me he didn't play no Southerner. Man, just the space that he takes up on the screen, his presence when you meet him and he's playing a harmonica, like I felt like I was on that corner with him. And I'll talk about this in kind of my overall thoughts of the movie, but a lot of what made Sinners so beautiful and so impactful was that I felt like I was there with them. I felt like I was there with them on that day, during that night to an extent as well. But so they're by this train station. They meet Delta Slim. He's playing his harmonica. There's a level of respect shown where Sammy's character, he's was about to strum his guitar to like show like, oh, I'm talented. And it was like, oh, hold up now, it's Delta Slim corner. And then they get into the conversation about asking Delta Slim to play at the juke joint. And it's like, hey, you might pay me 20 tonight, but I got something secure here. Like, I'm chilling, man. I got my drink, got my boys, got my music, consistency. I ain't really hearing what you talking about. And then Michael B. Jordan Stack, he pulls out the Irish beer. And when Delta Slim drinks that beer, I felt it. I felt what Ryan Coogler and the team were going for in there, where it's like this new concept, this crisp, ice cold beer you see on social media, or this notion of like cracking open a cold one, like the refreshingness that you feel through there from a man who's used to only drinking hard liquor, has never experienced this. And we learn on the car ride that they're about to go on when they pass the chain gang, he's been through a whole lot, which is evident in a lot of blues players, obviously. But just what he's experienced, what he's felt, just one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the movie when they're passing through the chain gang and he's like, hold your head up, brothers. Then you hear the gunshot and then the camera doesn't even show them no more, but you feel it. And Sammy, I believe, asked him like, oh, do you know those people? And he's like, I know all of them. And then he goes into this story about the chain gang. And in the background is something very subtle, but especially on the second time you notice, they have the sound effects that talk or make you like hear the sounds of the chains, or some of the anguish that they were in, the castration, like you hear it, you feel it in Delta Slim's voice. And I think just all of that is very much rooted in a very deep understanding of Black culture, Black history, the history of the blues, the history of music, and all of that encapsulated in this man, this older Black man, like taking a sip of an Irish cold beer for the first time. Like, it was just magical. Then something even more, this movie just keeps getting better and better, y'all. The more that you talk about it, just gets better and better. Then Michael B. Jordan Stack, he looks in the back seat like, boy, what you doing with that guitar? Like, what you waiting on? And if y'all never been to a jazz club or just been to an event, Sessions at the Shop is an excellent example of this, where you just feel the music, like talking with each other, and you really feel like what jazz music is, what blues music is. There's pain, there's sadness in all of that, and we use it to make this such beautiful art. And just beautiful. That probably was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, just because of how much I felt without them telling too much. They were building character through story. And one of the critiques that I've heard about Sinners is that in the first 45, 50 minutes, it's slow, like nothing really happens. They want people to get to it. But for me, it's just literally perfect character building. Like, I really feel like I know these people. I have like satellites or anchors for them in my brain of like, oh, these are people that I know that have some of these characteristics. This is somebody's granddad. This is somebody's cousin. Like, I really enjoyed that character building. That brings us back to Smoke's side of the story. So he's been in town. He's gotten the signs, or he's talked to Grace about the signs and talked to Caden about the catfish. And we'll get to some of the representation of the non-black characters a little later in the episode. But we meet Smoke back with, he's pulling up to Annie's house. He stops at the gravesite to tell their child that daddy was there. And then we meet Annie. And Annie is a very spiritual person. She practices hoodoo, which this movie actually introduced me to hoodoo. So I want y'all to do a little bit of homework if you don't know the difference between hoodoo and voodoo. But once again, little things that are so authentic to a non-monolithic view of blackness that are just so important in the film to see, to have. But we meet Annie. Just a brutally like vulnerable conversation between Smoke and Annie, where they talk about her spirituality and her not being able to protect their baby, which I was like, oh, why did you say that? I was like, oh, you don't say that. So rewinding to when he first enters the home, there's two little black girls there who are purchasing something from Annie, and they give her these wooden nickels, this money that black folks were quote unquote making during this time that was only good on the plantation, which once again, another nugget of history that isn't told frequently about like the differences in currency that black folks had access to when they even were getting compensated for the labor that they were doing. But Smoke comments on those wooden nickels and talks about like it being not being real money, like offering her quote unquote real money. And they have a conversation about money being rooted in blood. And you get this comparison of Smoke, who's been in Chicago, versus Annie, who's been in the Clarksdale, Mississippi, the Delta area for presumably all of her life, and some of their values. And this comes up a lot in some of the character traits of Smoke and Stack. This experience that they had with the Chicago gangs and experiencing the North versus what's waiting for them back at home. So all of that just really rooted deeply in character building, character development. And then we get into something that is so important for this movie to be as well, which is this movie is sexy. Like it has sex in it, which if you notice, a lot of movies don't have as much sex in them as has been more typical of Hollywood productions. You look at a lot of movies that came out in the 80s, there's a lot more sex scenes than you see in movies nowadays, which for one reason or another, but there's a lot of conversation. This is getting a little bit out the scope of the movie, but I promise we'll get back. There's conversation about society now not being as comfortable of talking about sex. And I think with Sinners, sexuality is such a big part of this movie, such a big part of these characters feeling freedom, expressing love for each other, that it sparks more conversations about sex. And one of the things I noticed a lot of people really appreciated about Sinners was that you have this bigger body, darker skinned black woman as a central love interest, as one of the main leading women characters in the film. And she is portrayed beautifully. She is portrayed in this light where she can be sexy. Her and the main character, both darker skinned people, can have a sex scene on screen. These things are all so important because once again, you look at the history of film and how many black sex scenes are there compared to white sex scenes in movies. And I know this might be a little bit rated R for some of y'all listening to this, but it's important for us to be able to have conversations about sex in a healthy way. It's important for there to be representation of black people expressing sexuality in a loving way, in a romantic way, but also in a freaky way on TV, like portraying black people as these holistic beings. And I think that's something that's just so powerful within Sinners. And this is something that I skipped over, but this also happens when we first meet Mary at the train station in that scene where they meet Delta Slim. And I know a lot of people, this was people's first introduction to Haley Steinfeld, but I've seen her in like a Transformers movie. She plays Kate Bishop in Hawkeye, which is a Marvel TV show. And to hear how she was talking about Stack fucking her, I was like, Haley? I was like, oh, this movie's grown. Like, this movie's different. And that's what I just really appreciate, because I feel like a lot of movies talk around sex, but This, once again, real people, like real ways that people interact with each other. And if we're being honest, these are real, authentic ways that people interact with each other. Fast forwarding, no, we got the scene with Annie and Smoke. Now let's get back with our friends Stack, Sammy. They got Delta Slim in the whip, and now they're pulling up on Cornbread. And this also is a good tie-in with what I was just talking about with the sex stuff in the movies, because another laugh out loud moment in this movie, this entire interaction with Omar Miller's character Cornbread, where he's like, "Hey man, it's my girl. Like, show some respect, Stack. Like, don't be talking to me this way in front of my girl. Don't be talking about, better yet, don't be talking about my girl this way." The hilarious part was when they flashed to Cornbread's wife, and she's like, "What kind of money we talking about?" I was like, "Oh, I love this movie." But just once again, authentic human interaction, because regardless of if we're Black people in this cotton field picking cotton, which is my job, or y'all pulling up in this whip, y'all headed to this juke joint y'all talking about, you ain't finna just talk to me any kind of way. Like, I'm gonna beat the Black off of you if you just pull up at my job, my wife right here, and you talking crazy. But once again, hilarious. Then we get to the juke joint. I'm saving a lot of the stuff about the vampires until they actually show up to the juke joint. So I skipped over the Choctaw scene for a very intentional reason. We get to the juke joint. The juke joint is popping, and we get this older Black man, the sharecropper, who's approaching the bar. He wants something to drink, and he's at the bar, like, serving him. And I think she says it costs like 30 cents, and he pulls out X amount of cents, and he says, "Oh, I only have this much, but this is good for use at such and such plantation," and they're quote unquote wooden nickels. And Smoke is prepared to be like, "Nah, G, like we need quote unquote real money." But Stack steps in and is like, "Oh, you want ice with that, right?" Like, protecting this interaction, which is also just good business. Like, that's another thing I really liked about Sinners. It really felt like I was watching people trying to put together a good business. And it reminded me a lot about putting on open mics, because it's like, all right, they ain't had a $5 today. Like, yes, we charge $5, but we're not demanding $5 from these people. Like, relax, bro. But Smoke calls Stack and Annie to the back or the upstairs, wherever it may be. And he's like, "We ain't taking none of them wooden nickels. Like, we need real money." And Stack's like, "Nah, bro, worked hard for that. All he trying to do is come up here, have himself a drink, and feel free. Like, we're not taking that for him. We're not taking that from him." And that's just where that freedom as a theme in Sinners was just so powerful for me. And I know I'm gassing this movie a lot right now. I genuinely love it. I don't care if anybody listening to this agrees with anything I've said, but I will get into like more of the critiques people have for it, and not necessarily defending the critiques, but just my perspective on why those critiques don't impact my enjoyment of the movie. Let's get to the music. When people talk about Sinners, when people were tweeting about Sinners when it first got released opening weekend and they were trying not to spoil it, you would see people tweet about quote unquote that scene. And for those of us who got the pleasure of seeing that scene in 70 millimeter IMAX, what an experience that was. If y'all haven't checked out beautiful marketing video, but also a very informative and important video, Kodak and Ryan Coogler did a collaboration where he described the various ways that you can watch a movie and various aspect ratios and features of a movie. Highly suggest checking that out. The Big Picture also has a really impactful episode, The Big Picture also has a really impactful episode where Sean and Amanda, the hosts, they visited or they saw movies in these different formats and gave anecdotal reviews of what the experience is like. Just great content because a lot of people are just used to your standard screen. A lot of people have heard of IMAX, but when you get into 70 millimeters, 40X, Dolby Digital, those are less known for people who don't go to the movies that often because, let's face it, movies are hella expensive right now. And they have been for quite some time. But getting back to that scene, Delta Slim's been on the keys, and then excellent hosting. He tells Sammy to come up. Sammy starts strumming his guitar and he's like, hold up, boy, tell him where you from. And then Sammy's beautiful, deep voice starts singing. And I've been listening to the soundtrack so much, like, it was like, man, I understand why people listen to the blues. Like, you think about all the stuff that's going on in the media right now. That's why art is so important. Because I imagine there's people who still to this day, like, love the blues and they're writing blues music to everything, quote unquote, everything that's going on in our world. We think about all these negative things, and for somebody to turn all this negativity or all this negative energy into something so beautiful, magical, then it gets more magical because Sammy's playing, they're singing, people are dancing, and you're like, wow, this is so rich. And then you hear this guitar play. It's like, wait, hold up. And you also have the narration, which I'm not sure if a lot of people maintained it throughout it because the scene had a lot of elements to it. But Delta Slim is explaining to Sammy why blues is important and the power of the blues. And you have Annie talking about the power of a person who's so good with their talent that they're able to cross generations, connect people across time. And we see this interwoven scene where you have futuristic music, you have African music, you have drummers, you have dancers from Chinese culture, you have people playing cards, you have people drinking, you have people twerking, you have people crip walking, you got the DJ scratching. It's just so much blackness, so much richness, so much music. And I know this scene isn't going to work for everybody because it can take you out of the movie if you're too focused on trying to like figure out what makes sense or what's real. But if you give in to the movie and suspend your disbelief, especially in 70 millimeters, that scene is magic. That scene is one of the best movie scenes to ever be put on record. He sings So I Lied to You. And then that's our first introduction to the trio of vampires now. They're coming upon the juke joint. They're hearing the music. They're attracted to this area. But you just see this image or this scene of Black people dancing to Sammy singing. Things are in flames. And I don't know if this is necessarily my intent, but something that I did register is that my brain was thinking of how, essentially what was going to happen at the end of the movie, how the Klan, white supremacists, they burn a lot of these Black structures and try to vandalize Black structures. And I think the imagery of the vampires coming and the barn or the juke joint on fire, I don't know, something clicked in my brain. Let me know in the comments if y'all also had something or if y'all also clocked that moment. But then we leave the vampires outside for a while. And this is my first time bringing up just one of the most beautiful people to ever be put onto film. Jamie Lawson as Pearline, just amazingly beautiful Black woman. And if y'all listen to this, go tell a Black woman she's beautiful. I know sometimes we see some of these videos on social media and people say stuff like that, and it might come across as corny, but when you really like, I'm sorry, y'all, you can't take out the African American Studies minor. I apologize. However, when you think of all that Black women have had to go through, like, it's so great that we had a movie with Black leads, beautiful dark-skinned Black leads. Just like, read a book, y'all. And that might sound real pretentious right now because I'm trying to keep on focus with the podcast. But read a book, tell a Black woman she's beautiful. Back to Pearline. Sammy first laid eyes on Pearline while he was playing music when they first met Delta Slim. Fell for her immediately. She talked about she married. He said happily. Got a chuckle out of me. And we also, going back to that first cousin ride, we had Stack explaining to, all right, I know some of y'all listening to this I'm related to, and y'all might not want to hear me talk about all of the sexual components of Sinners, but we have to grow up, y'all. I'm 29. We're going to talk about sex like adults on this podcast. So we have the first ride with Sammy and Stack, and Stack is explaining to Sammy how to eat pussy. And we fast forward, for the podcast's sake, we fast forward to this scene where Sammy's about to go down on Pearline. They lock the door. So in preparation for this podcast, I asked followers of the Banquet Hall on Instagram, at Banquet Hall Pod, I asked the followers of the Instagram page, what was the sexiest moment of Sinners? And this line was said by a lot of people. Sammy, Pearline, they about to go at it. She's like, boy, let me wash up first, walked all this way. And Sammy looks at her eyes and is like, you're beautiful. I want to taste you. You go, Sammy. You go, Sammy. That's great writing. That is great writing. But a lot of people, you said that was like the sexiest moment of the film. But once again, being able to have a film where we talk about freedom and the movie being called Sinners, there's a lot of themes of what it means to sin, especially in a religious context. And for a lot of people, sex out of wedlock, you have people who aren't married having sex. All of that is just important for a vampire movie. So I gave a lot of my thoughts so far on a lot of the non-vampire things, because once again, that first part of the movie is just so rich in character development, authentically Black stuff, the history of music, blues, love, romance, that I really, really appreciated that part of the movie a lot. So I wanted to make sure I talked about that part, because I think when it comes to people who are afraid to see Sinners, or were originally afraid to see Sinners because they were afraid it was quote unquote too scary, that's the part of the movie where I'm like, oh, like if you would just believe me, there's such a big, beautiful movie in itself before you even get to the scary stuff. Outside of what I always am into, outside of a few jump scares early on, like this is just a Black movie right now. Like, and it was just so impactful that I was like, nah, like, I know it says vampire, give it a chance. But let's get into another thing that I really love about this movie conceptually. This movie doesn't care if you know nothing about vampires. They have a little bit of exposition where Annie explains to the patrons of the juke joint, the people who are left in the juke joint after the vampires come, where she talks about like vampire history, how to kill vampires, what they have to do. But they keep it pretty light, and they don't explain every single thing. Some of the things they show through dialogue, they show through character moments, which I'll get into in a bit. But there's been so many vampire movies. I think this is a lesser movie if we know too much or are told too much about the vampires, because there needs to be this air of suspense. There needs to be this air of mystery. And I think this movie takes a stance where it's like, yeah, like y'all seen a vampire movie. Y'all get it. They came from somewhere. Like, yes, there is a backstory that Remy could have had that we could have been told as an audience. But for me, Sinners is a lesser movie if we spend an extra 15 minutes with background to Remick. It could get a little expository. I could get a little away from the story of our main characters. And obviously none of us, if you're Ryan Coogler listening to this, like, hey, my mom made it. But none of us are Ryan Coogler. None of us know exactly what he was thinking about or his intention outside of what he shared in interviews. But my take on Sinners, and for me, what makes some of the critiques of it that I've seen not really matter in my head is that I truly believe that Ryan Coogler was just focused on us being a part of and immersed into this Black story. So we get some things about the non-Black characters, but only based on character interactions because we're learning this world with the characters. We only know as much about the vampires as Smoker Stack know, as much as Annie knows, as much as they're learning through interacting with the vampires in the movie. We're basically at the juke joint with them where we're like, hey, like, they just showed up singing Pick Poor Robin Clean. It's kind of feeling it a little bit, but I don't know where he came from. I don't know who these other two people are. We're just as lost as the characters, to where I think all that we really needed to see was that initial showing of Remick on the screen where he literally bursts onto the frame, into the scene, into the field in front of the house. And he's burning from being in the sun. He knocks on this door. He's trying to get let into the house. That's all I need. Like, and a lot of this is obviously in retrospect. Like, when I'm first watching the movie, I have these questions, but I'm just going with where the movie takes me. Like, I'm there for the ride of the movie. I surrendered myself to the movie. And so he gets let in. One of the most impactful, like, kind of tense or thriller moments of the movie was when, I forget the woman's name, but when she's going upstairs to find her husband, having been bit by Remick. And it's very suspenseful. You don't know if something's going to pop out and happen. He's like, oh, he's just taking a little nap. But before that, we get the Native American characters, the Choctaw peoples. And another complaint I've seen a lot about is that people want to know more about the Choctaw Indian story, whether or not they're these vampire hunters. But once again, I think that it's reflective of how much we do center a lot of Indigenous and Native stories. There hasn't been a lot of space for those stories. So I get that, wanting to see more of that narrative. But they was like, hey, we tried to let you know he was trying to kill y'all and y'all shouldn't have let him in. We know more about him than y'all do, but y'all too busy being racist. Y'all ain't trying to listen. We gonna get back to our village, to our community, because I ain't got time if y'all not trying to hear it. I do think the movie could have had more of that, more of their story, but I don't think I was necessarily missing it. I only thought about missing it when people talked about that as a critique of the movie. But once again, they're not paying me for this. So I'm not out here trying to defend the movie, but just not something that was as important to me as a viewer. But once again, movie trust that you've seen a vampire movie before. We give you some things. If you literally have no idea of a vampire, hey, he bites this guy turns into a vampire. They're part of this hive mind now. Let's move on. They get to the juke joint. They're trying to get let in. They're talking about wanting to play music. They heard Sammy's voice. Once again, they play that Pick Poor Robin Clean. And the one thing I really loved about this was some foreshadowing where Stack's kind of like bobbing his head to Pick Poor Robin Clean. And even as like how the movie is composed, we as an audience also kind of start vibing to the music. Like when they hit that guitar move, you're like, all right, like I'm vibing with y'all. Like you might, if you are the type to want to, you might consider letting them in. But if you do, y'all gonna die. And so they turned him away. Lots of great little moments I want to spend too much time on, like how'd she get in here pointing at Mary, and they talking about her being family, questioning if they're racist, like just a very good scene. And something else I think it does very effectively, it doesn't really paint Remick, like yes, he's a vampire, but it doesn't paint him as villainous. Like they just like, hey, we just trying to spend some money, drink some beer, like play some music with y'all, dance and be in fellowship. There's a lot of those words like fellowship that allure to community, to this freedom, things that people get in churches. But in this sense, this quote unquote sinners are getting it by potentially joining this group of vampires. So they don't let the vampires in. And then you get Pearline pale, pale moon. She's dancing, people stomping, people getting stomped out. It's a lot going on, but it's such just a great scene. Like, absolutely love that scene. Um, and obviously, not all of this is in like actual chronological order as happened into the movie. But once again, just going off of things that come to mind when I think about things I love about the movie, which leads us to Mary and Stack talking about going out to see what they don't know are vampires, but see what they talking about, see if they actually good people. Mary saying that they're more likely to share honest information with her. So she goes out there, she gets bit. They singing that "Go Lassie Go," which once again very much um, taking your guard down a bit with the vampires. They have this alluring music. Like, obviously, if the music isn't your thing, it's not gonna be your thing. But to some people, it's very alluring music. It's welcoming. It feels very communal. Remick even appeals to Mary's recent loss, appealing to that humanity in her and like helping her find freedom. Mary gets bit off screen, comes back in, and then we get Stag turning into a vampire and comes back in. Then we get Stag getting turned into a vampire. Uh, Beautiful acting by Haley, because when she turned to camera with blood all on her face and she was like, "We's gonna kill all y'all," or however she said it, I was like, "Oh, she is gone." Like, that's terrifying. Then you got Smoke Ice and Stack. "Oh, is that you?" And he's like, "Nah, fool, it's Jim Crow." Writers, it's a funny joke. Um, so, like I said, not trying to take up too much of your time with one episode. If this goes well, definitely going to be a part two to this before we get into another movie. So, if y'all have thoughts on things that I haven't discussed, takes that y'all have on things I've said, things you agree with, disagree with, or didn't even think of, make sure y'all leave comments on Spotify or YouTube. If you want to leave a voice memo, do that. And if you do leave a voice memo, send it to @BanquetHallPod on Instagram. If you do leave a voice memo, make sure you let me know if I can use it in the podcast, because I'd love to get some of y'all voices in here. That's why it's called a film club. Don't want it to just be me talking, but want to engage with y'all, get y'all thoughts going. So part two to this, I'll definitely include some comments that I've heard from people, things they wanted me to share in the podcast on their views on Sinners. Um, yeah, just want to make it a community here where we could talk about movies, because we need more Black people talking about movies. You go on Letterboxd and these review apps, there's so many Black movies that are under reviewed, or you got white people, non-Black people commenting on it. "Oh, I don't understand this." Or it's like, "Well, I didn't understand all the stuff y'all was doing in y'all movies either. If you don't understand it, it ain't for you." Still cinematic masterpiece. But that's besides the point. Once again, we're going to get into some of those ad hoc topics in future episodes. But just a few more moments that I wanted to mention about Sinners. One, I keep talking about them kind of making Remick the vampires feel alluring, feel attractive, which is a component of vampire movies, of course, but it's also important just to make us as viewers, once again, feel immersed in the movie, where it's like you feel drawn to, you feel a magnetism to Remick. And when they show the vampires all outside hitting that Irish jig, and Jack O'Connell, Remick, when he hit that footwork in the theater and they had the Road to Dublin playing in the background, be honest, there was a moment where you were like, "Oh, he hitting it." Like, you respected him. You know you did. At least I did. I'm willing to admit it. Well, I was like, "Nah, he hitting that." And then you see, which is one of my favorite little like background things about the movie, you see the Black folks in the background getting it to this music too. Omar Miller, Cornbread's character, he hit a little step that I was like, "Oh, this dude is feeling it." And then you got Michael B. Jordan, you got Stack, you got Haley Steinfeld, like really just getting into it. I'm like, "Oh, they sold." It's just so powerful. And a lot of the scenes with them trying to get into the juke joint are just some of the best comedic moments in the movie. Like I know I asked about funniest moment in the movie. A lot of people mentioned when Cornbread's trying to get in and he's having a back and forth with Annie. It's like, you bring your big ass in here then. Or why you can't just barge your big ass in here? Like that type of rhetoric that they were having with each other, just chef's kiss. Um, Man, chef's kiss. But that leads to one of the final scenes before all the vampires get in is when they find what they believe is blood on the ground, and they wonder who in the group is still a vampire. And so Annie instructs all the characters to eat garlic. And I think this scene is what really encapsulates how great this movie is at character building. Because if you bought on to everything the movie was trying to sell you, you're on the ride for the movie. You really feel like you know these characters to where you have this moment where you're eating garlic and it's like, don't let it be Pauline. Don't let it be Delta Slim. Like, you're concerned for who might be a vampire. And it turns out none of them are, which eases a lot of that tension. But it just shows that we've been on this journey with these characters. You feel like you're part of this community. And then the part that a lot of people talk about on social media, when Grace is like, come at me, motherfuckers, and lets the vampires in. For my Marvel, I've just seen Marvel fans compare this to when Star-Lord wasn't trying to get the gauntlet off of Thanos and was too worried about Gamora. It's like, no, what are you doing? But come on, y'all, it's her daughter. It's her daughter. Like, at first, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, why should you do that? But you have to get the vampires in there, otherwise the movie can't end. But it is her daughter. And I am not a parent, but I know for damn sure if there was any non-zero chance of my kid potentially getting bit up by a vampire because I was too scared to face them head on, nah, I'm going down with the ship, y'all. I'm going down with the ship. But you have the vampires come in, you have the back and forth. I talked at the beginning of the episode about the moment between Smoke and Stag, but one of the most, when I say bold choices in the movie, is the Our Father scene. Sammy's on the run, the sun's about to come up soon, and Remick has him within his grasp, and he starts saying the Our Father, and then the vampires say the Our Father with him. I got goosebumps. A lot of people not gonna like that scene. A lot of people not gonna like that scene, and I think it's saying something very loud about the role of religion and Christianity specifically. I mean, obviously Remick talks about the oppressors forcing that on the Irish people as well. A lot of people aren't going to like that, but I thought it was such like a perfect like film moment. I'm like, this is why we go to the movies. Shout out to Nicole Kidman. So earlier I was mentioning how I don't like trailers or don't like watching trailers a lot because I start outthinking the movie. One of the things that's the main component of the trailer for Sinners is Michael B. Jordan gunning somebody down. You don't know what he's shooting at. You just see him in slow motion shooting. And so one of the things that makes me know the movie was successful was I wasn't consciously thinking about that or waiting for that scene. But once it's daytime and you see him setting up and getting his equipment out, I'm like, oh yeah, this scene still hasn't happened yet. And I love it. We needed, we needed that. We needed to see a movie where racist ass KKK members is getting gunned down. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. However, we needed that in a movie. We needed it. We're talking about movies here. We needed that. Just a great scene. Just a fantastic scene. And then just the ending notes on such tender notes of him trying to light the cigarette, which I saw people mention about how Smoke or Stack always rolled his cigarettes for him, so he don't even really know how to roll one effectively. But he has that last cigarette. He sees Annie, he sees his child, and then the KKK dude say something, and the look on Michael B. Jordan's face, I'm like, that's acting, because he was disgusted. that he interrupted this moment, and then he reloads and fires into him. Bravo movie. Bravo. Um, and obviously you have some of the post-credit stuff. It's beautiful. The music at the end, the depiction of the vampires. I believe it was 60 years after the events of the movie. You have Sammy going back to the church. Once again, a lot of things I could talk about with Sinners. There's a lot to unpack in some of the themes that as related to Black culture, Black history, white people and oppressors being sucking the life out of Black people and being vampires to Black content and vampires to Black culture. There's a lot of stuff that you could talk about within that subtext, but that's where y'all have to join the conversation. So definitely let me know some of your favorite parts of the movie, quotables that you can't stop saying, things you can't stop thinking about. Let me know in the comments if you like this first episode of the Film Club. Let me know what movies you want to talk about, what questions you have. Like I said, really want this to be a communal environment, and let's have a good time. This has been the Banquet Hall Podcast, the 4K Film Club. I don't even know if I called it the 4K Film Club at the beginning, but we're in the 4K Film Club, brought to you by the Banquet Hall Podcast. Make sure y'all follow the podcast at Banquet Hall Pod. Like, subscribe, and most importantly, share it with a friend. 20 billion people in your life who saw Sinners. There's somebody you can share this podcast with. I know when I do the interviews, y'all like, I don't really know them like that. I don't need to share it. Somebody that saw Sinners. So hit them up, send them the link. That's what makes movies so important, so special. That's what makes art so impactful, is the conversations that we have it. But thank y'all for listening, and we will catch y'all next Film Club.